I just wanted to add a tiny bit to this, which is we did some fantastic work, additional work coach time, which is precisely to what is the evidence when we free up our work coaches to focus on those with health conditions and disabilities. And we found that just by calling, asking if they wanted to come in for a meeting, we got 3% more people into work. Now 3% sounds small, but of 2.8 million people currently out of work due to long-term sickness, that's really, really good. But even better than that, 3% more in work, but mental well-being improved. We were actually, some of them referring them on to mental health services. Financially better off because we referred people to debt advice to get the finances back on track. So we've got a resource. The resources aren't infinite. Our work coaches themselves say we don't need to focus on those people. We can do that over the phone or online. These are the people we need to spend more time with. And that's the amazing thing about them, our work coaches, is they know what's what. They know their local economy, they know what people need. And we do actually have evidence that if you spend more time with people, refer them on to the right services, they can get work and they can be financially better off.
So just my final part of this section is just, so I'm a former trade union official. I believe in good work. So not just any job, but jobs where people have good terms and conditions, where they feel secure, where they are developed, where they have agency and a voice and security. So how do you, and I do agree, work coaches are phenomenal. I've met many in my local job centre. How do you ensure that work coaches have the time to make sure that they're not pushing people into any job, but that we are making sure people get good work and good jobs with good terms and conditions?
Well, this is one of the whole points of our reform of job centres, is that we better match the people who need work with the jobs that they need to get, and ideally to get on in their jobs too. I'd say it's not just about what we do within the DWP. We've got our employment rights legislation to improve the quality of work. We're creating more good jobs. We've invested, £113 billion over the SR in building new homes and clean energy. But we're also looking at what we can do as a department with other government departments. I've already met with Ed Miliband and everyone who's involved in the clean energy workforce strategy to say, okay, you're going to be creating these jobs. How do we get our people into those jobs? What's the partnership we can build? Similarly, with the construction industry, because we're building 1.5 million new homes, but there's much more we can do. We're investing in our water infrastructure, creating new jobs. On defence, I think that this is about government saying we've got to be much more joined up. And the DWP, we want to go out there and do a deal with those employers and say we are overhauling our approach to employers. It's not acceptable that only 1 in 6 employers has ever used a job centre to recruit. So we're overhauling that. We've got a dedicated team now in the department. They're going to have single account managers. We want to do much more as a partnership there. So there's a long way to go, but we have made a good start in this first year in office.
And in the job centre, I regularly sit alongside work coaches in job centres, and the conversation is all about, well, what can you do? Let's understand your skills, let's understand your employment history and your aspirations and what you want to do. And connected to employers in the way the Secretary of State has described, but one of the particular successes that we've had over the last few years is sector-based work academies, where we work closely with employers to give our claimants the opportunity to have work experience and training, leading to a guaranteed job interview at the end of that. And there were over 80,000 of those over the course of last year. That's directly connecting people to those roles. And many of those are in the sectors that the Secretary of State has described: good jobs, growing jobs, good opportunities for people.
Any Kruger?
Very quickly, job coaches tell me one real problem they've got is employers concerned about the national insurance rise. Has the department done an analysis of the likely impact on both the supply of jobs but also on wages in consequence of the national insurance rise itself?
Well, actually, my experience of talking to employers, even since that rise, is many are desperate to recruit. You know, they've got jobs that they really need skills for. We've got people who are out of work who we need to get those skills. So, as I said earlier, you know, we want to make sure that we much better match the needs of employers with the right people who are coming through from us. And actually, I know that you know, businesses, you know, are under a lot of pressure, but actually the ones that I've spoken to are still much more likely to talk about the challenges of recruiting, not that they are not recruiting at all. They are desperate to get people to work in those, particularly in those growth sectors that the government is funding.
I just asked the Permanent Secretary what work the Department has done to assess the impact of the National Insurance rise on the jobs market.
Those assessments are done by the ABR and they were published alongside those fiscal statements in the normal way.
Frank McNally.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, Secretary of State, Permanent Secretary. We're grateful to you both for joining us this morning. Can I ask you about the planned unemployment insurance benefit set for 28-29? And I suppose this maybe follows on a bit from Joanna's question. I think this has the potential to be really transformative and really support people who will be in that devastating position of losing a job in terms of income protection. Can I ask you specifically around the plans to support, and I quote, people to find a new job that makes the most of their skills, end quote. What will the structure of that benefit look like to ensure that we're achieving that ambitious goal?
You'll know in the Green Paper we're consulting on this, a new unemployment insurance, a new contributory benefit, which would be non-means tested and set at a higher rate for those who've paid into the system. And the argument behind this is, you know, we have the two separate JSA and ESA at the moment, and it's to say, actually, in that really crucial part where you lose a job, how we can better to support people. I mean, they don't have to define themselves as incapable of work for health reasons. How we actually revive the contributory principle. And crucially, I think I said a bit about this with the Mayfield review, it's during that early period where you're out of work, how we actually pile in support to help you as quickly as possible get back into work, because we know once you're out, once you're on the health top-up, I think it's fewer than 3% of people a year actually get back into work. So this is something that we are consulting on. We haven't developed any further proposals yet. You will have to wait till we obviously go through all the consultation responses to the Green Paper, but it is very much about making sure we better support people during that early phase, get them back into work as quickly as possible. Do not put another disincentive in the system, which is defining yourself as incapable of work. And revive that principle that if you paid in, you should get out.
I appreciate Secretary of State. It's a consultation, and there'll be an outcome to that, and an analysis of the findings of that. But I suppose within the flexibility that we would be looking at for a benefit of this nature, can you expand on whether you would expect claimants, for example, to be permitted to reject potential job matches? There have been some concerns that people who have got medium to high skills may feel forced into work that is perhaps not suited to their skills, but forced to maybe go down that route to avoid sanction. Is that something that the department is mindful of?
It's something we're absolutely mindful of, and as I say, my experience of working with work coaches is they absolutely start with the track record that the claimant might have in employment, the skills that they've got, and how can they get into a role that is appropriate to that skill base and give them the time to do that. Obviously, if it's been a long time and they can't get back into that, then there needs to be a different type of conversation. But that's where the conversation generally starts, in my experience.
No, what we want is for people to get into jobs and to stay in those jobs. And that is always better done when you match what people's skills are and what they want for their lives with the appropriate jobs. Now, that is not always available, but that's partly why this government wants to try and create more better jobs in every part of the country. I never see the work of the DWP as somehow separate from the rest of the government's strategy, which is to say we don't have enough good jobs in this country. We want to improve the quality of jobs that already exist, but we need to create them because all of the problems we have discussed are far worse in the parts of the country that have struggled for decades, places where whole industries closed and where we need to create those opportunities. That's why, if you look at whether it's those on disability benefits, young people who are not in education, employment or training, those who are claiming universal credit, all of those problems are concentrated in parts of the countries. The parts of the countries we're in, many of us came into politics to represent, and that this department's work is intrinsically linked with those of other government departments. And one of the things that I know Peter feels as strongly about as I do, actually, is that this department ends up picking up the pieces of the problems that are deep-rooted from many other government areas. Now, we've got to change that. We cannot work in those silos. I mean, poor health, poor opportunities, low skills, not enough jobs, those are the problems we have to tackle together. We're at the sharp end of it. But, and it comes back to some of the points that have been raised earlier about what's happened, admittedly, a bumpy ride over the welfare legislation. But we have to start shifting resources into the things that really help create better lives for people. And we are spending, I believe, too much on the costs of failure and not enough on the better health, better jobs, better skills that we need. That is extremely difficult to shift, but because people rely on those benefits and they've built their lives around them. But unless we grapple with this, benefits alone is not the solution to a better life. I mean, although obviously that is the focus of this committee's discussions.
I welcome